I first started collecting when I was 7 years old.
I'd have been 8 years old at the time.
I was in elementary school.
And then I stopped collecting.
Junior high, I kind of outgrew collecting cards.
When you get to high school, you want to chase girls and get fancy cars.
I got into cars or girls or something else, in high school.
Then the pandemic hit, and everybody was at home.
The victim pulled out the gun.
With a disagreement over trading cards.
In August of 2020, I got back into it and started buying again.
I just recently got back into it about 3 months ago.
One of my friends was like, hey, I just bought a sports card for $15,000. They're not worth that much. There's just no way.
And everybody was at home. Everybody had a chance to go through their collection. People realized that there was money to be made in this industry.
Okay, explain what is going on. It's like, I just spent 15 grand and I plan to sell it in maybe 6 weeks time for 10 grand more. I'm like, 6 weeks time, you're gonna make 10 grand? How is that possible?
There are kids in high school right now that will be financially independent by the time they are 30 because they've started investing in sports cards today.
Oh, look at that.
People laugh at me that I'm looking at Pokemon cards, but I'm having fun because I'm revisiting my childhood. At the same time, I'm monetizing my future.
Once you hold these cards in your hand and you realize it's American history, Jackie Robinson's 1948 Leaf and Michael Jordan's rookie card, it brings back all that excitement of a kid. You become addicted and it's exciting and fun.
Oh, this is hard. This was against Houston. That's crazy that I look at the picture and I remember the game.
I'm working hard every single day to make this rookie card worth something.
The money that's in the industry right now is staggering. There's so many people that are coming in that pull out a wad of $1,000, $2,000, $3,000 to make their weekly purchase.
The only reason the sports card market took off was because of me. Because it's my vision to put baseball cards on the map and turn it from a hobby to a multi-million-dollar business opportunity.
I don't know what, I've never done it like this. By the way, this is very rare for me to do interviews with sports cards. I've turned down everything.
So I'm here with Chris Fitzjarrald, the director of Behind the Card, a new release that comes out in theaters November 18th, and I'm here to talk to him about his new release.
Thanks a lot for having me on, Kyle. I'm looking forward to speaking with you here about cards and the movie in general.
So you put together a really good film. I got early access to it. I watched it actually twice. It really encompassed all the aspects of collecting from the 80s to modern and to even opinions in the future. A lot of big names, influencers like Vegas Dave, Jeff Wilson, sports card investor, Steve Aoki, Rob Go, some high-end collectors. You had some business marketers on there, Mark Warsop with the CEO of Panini America, Jeremy Murray with Beckett Collectibles. You had card shop owners, Perry Solomon and Joe Davis, professional breakers, Rich Lathan with Lathan Sports Cards, which has become huge, the breaking community. Grading company, Jesse Craig from PWCC. You had two professional athletes actually on the movie too, Nick Gonzalez with the Pirates and Josh Jacobs covering your football collectibles. And one of the coolest things that I thought with this movie was the merchandising guy, Chris Lasora, that you had, who did Target and Walmart restocks for all the retail flippers. So
slowly, I start noticing people around me. They come up, talk, be nice, blah, blah, blah. Got a little bit creepy when I was doing other work in the store, and they'd be coming up to me, when are you putting out the cards?
a really wide range of opinions covering a lot of different aspects of the hobby community. And it was really cool and very neat to see everybody's different opinions on how things work. So how did you draw these guys out of your list of people to put on the film?
Yeah, that's a great question. And essentially, if you look at the space of the card market, it's more like a secondary asset for a lot of people nowadays. So essentially, when I wanted to do this documentary, I was thinking, okay, let's get other people that aren't collecting or investing to come join us in this card collecting venture here. So essentially, I wanted to provide the right knowledge and the right places for individuals to go once they saw my movie, when they decided, let me go buy my first card, let me do my first break. So individuals like Layton Sports Cards, very large organization at this point for breaking. I would say they're the most kid friendly. So we kind of went that direction. They have a really big community as well of followers that really are diehard Layton followers, right?
Yeah.
From that perspective. So when you look at individuals like that, that's why I brought them in. Sports card investor Jeff Wilson, he does a really good job of just highlighting news on an ongoing basis. almost daily, right? Essentially across all sports. So being able to consume that data and like sports card investors side off of not the investment side of Jeff, but his, content side, he's not really pushing people into certain players. He's just giving you an idea of what's going on. So we tried to figure out how can we place that in each single section of our film. And then we wanted to get big guys and big players, right? So we needed Panini or Topps involved. So we sat down with Panini and their CEO and their VP of marketing. And then with the grading companies, really at the time, it was Beckett and PSA was far, ahead of everyone else. So we really looked at doing one of those individuals, and we chose Beckett because of their history, the Beckett pricing guides, right? So they were able to bring more than just grading to our movie. And we're able to really talk about different sections of what's going on in the card market space. So that, from a director standpoint, is essentially why I went that way with the individuals that we had.
Beckett was doing price guides in the 80s and the 90s, just print magazines that were being distributed to stores and retailers across the country. And then we slowly adapted and got into the Beckett Marketplace and then Beckett card grading in 2000.
Yeah, cool. It was a really cool cast. And I said Vegas Dave's name first, so it probably got lost in translation, but by far my favorite character.
You lost half your viewers already. You either love or hate Vegas Dave out there in the card community, right?
That's fine. But there was a lot of cool Vegas Dave moments. And if you're into Vegas Dave, you're going to love it. And if you don't like Vegas Dave, I don't know why, but some really cool moments there. So you started out with the movie talking about the big COVID boom and how it affected the sports cards market in 2020. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, definitely. And, we were doing this. I essentially was part of that. So I moved from Los Angeles to Vegas. And when I moved here during quarantine, my wife, Paula Fitzjarrald, that worked with me on this film, actually went to Target. So I tagged along and I grabbed a box of cards. And then all of a sudden, you go back and there's no cards. And you're like, what? Is there like a distribution chain issue because Panini or Topps aren't putting out cards? But no, they were, right? And so I started researching and seeing what was going on. And essentially it led me to actually do a couple early morning runs when they put out cards the day before. And I noticed there was, 20, 30 people in line at 5:30. And it was wild. And I think that essentially marked the peak of the craze of the card community between 2017 and 2021. So essentially we felt like leading with that would be good in terms of getting people that weren't in the market to understand how crazy an industry could get, but then also like all as collectors, how we could reminisce about not being able to break retail wax for a while there because we couldn't get our hands on it, right? So I think it's going to hit home for both viewers from that perspective for sure.
We do our absolute best to obtain as much product as we possibly can that meets the demands of our customers. I pay attention to our Facebook group, I pay attention to emails, I watch social media. Everybody starts asking me, hey, when are you getting this product? Hey, when are you listing this product? I know that I'm gonna need a large amount of that product.
Yeah, and you really did a good job of encompassing like the total just chaos of 2020. One of my favorite parts that we talked about before was when you interviewed the independent contractor of merchandising for Target Restocks, Chris Lasora, and he mentioned when you interviewed him that he at some point had guarded security to do his Target Restocks, which I thought was just really crazy. Because I followed the market, you could go buy a box of Prison Football for $50 and you could sell it on eBay for $150. I mean, it was just like instant ROI, and everybody caught on to that. But you want to talk about just the idea of going after a guy like that? It was a really cool idea, and I thought it was one of the better parts of the movie.
Definitely. And, that's kind of like little surprises like that throughout the movie where we bring individuals in that you wouldn't believe are in that case. Or you mentioned Vegas Dave too and what he's done, but he's been collecting since 14, which a lot of people don't understand, right? So you'll start to see little characters pop up. And we felt like the flipper thing that's like a wrench in the card market for a lot of collectors, but for investors, that was a big move, right? For individuals to be able to flip boxes right away. But we wanted to say, okay, we all know how crazy it was, but how crazy was it on the other end when you actually have to put the cards out and people are like, when are you going to put the cards out? Where are you at? You see people standing in line waiting for you, following you around when you're wheeling those little boxes, around to put on the card shop. And so Paulo was our casting director, and essentially what I did was spent 6 months behind the scenes before we actually filmed anyone, just to really understand the entire marketplace. And I would say, Rob Go's in it, Steve Aoki's in it, but Chris was the hardest guy to find and nail down for an actual interview, because it's like, how do you even get a hold of those guys, right?
Yeah.
And we got referred finally from an individual I knew down in Florida to him in Tampa, Florida. So we actually flew from Vegas to Tampa to actually cast him in our interview. That's how we got him done.
Yeah, it was a super cool idea. So some other things in the movie that I liked was kind of how you talked about the evolution of card collecting in the 80s. You talked to all these guys about how, like Steve Aoki, he in 2020 he said he was recording in his music studio. He got a little bit of burnout and he texted his buddy. He said, "Hey, I just sold this card for $10,000 on eBay." And he's like, "What do you mean a card?" And it instantly like gravitated him into collecting. But how did the 2020 boom affect the market as it was prior to?
Yeah, I think prior to, I think the effect was the mass production of cards affected in a negative way. I think the boom in the 2020 sector was a boom for individuals to join the hobby, and that affected it in a positive way. And I think it wasn't really like a downtrend coming from that. I just think that you can only push so many people into a low supply and not expect a little more supply on the back end. And when everyone got out of quarantine, things change in terms of your own relationships and what you're doing at home. And I think there was just, during quarantine, there was a lot of extra cash laying around.
Yeah,
well, right?
Yeah, stimulus checks were nice.
Yeah, like Jeff talks about in our film, if right away, like if you invested your stimulus check, if you
and
got
I did the same thing. It was just it was too easy. Yeah,
it's too easy. So like all that capital coming in and the excitement of just there was no sports. So like the excitement to be able to like talk about sports as well, I think was big for the card collecting community, because you were still you still collected as if they were playing or what they were doing or prospecting. It was almost like Bowman prospecting to me. It's like who's going to come back better than ever, the following year, since we don't have anyone right now, right? So I think all that mixed together just created this amazing storm for not just collectors but investors, right? And hopefully some collectors let go of some cards that they just weren't really PCing and just holding on to as an investment early on, and others hopefully they grabbed what they wanted to for the future, 10 to 15, 20 years down the road when this happens again eventually.
Yeah, and it's crazy how it's went from like a hobby to a legitimate secondary income for a lot of people. So you're talking about prospecting, and that's my niche. That's where I stay. I don't really go out of my lane.
I'm Bowman, baby.
But you did a really good job in the movie of getting the different viewpoints on vintage versus modern. I saw Rob Go, and he's a big vintage guy. He bought the 62 Mantle, I think, for like $4.5 million.
If you look at vintage versus modern, for me, I'm more of a vintage guy. And the reason why is I'm not gonna put $5 million into a guy that's currently playing baseball. The guy could slide into home plate, he could get hurt. He could say something stupid in the news, he could do something illegal. That $5 million card then goes down to nothing. He could retire early without a championship. You never know what's gonna happen.
You had him, and you had Vegas Dave talk about how there's no reason to buy vintage when somebody's dead, because they're not going to appreciate in the coffin. But tell me a little bit about the section that you did on the vintage versus modern with the different opinions of the guys that you got in the video, or the movie. Sorry, I'm used to doing videos. You're actually a director. I'm just a guy that does YouTube videos. So.
Yeah, and essentially we had two opposite characters there, right? Talking about vintage and modern and how they collected. You got Vegas Dave and his personality all the way on this side, and you have Rob Go chilling on this side with his bigger vintage investments, right? And it was it was really unique how they weren't in the same room. They didn't know they were in the film together, but they had polar opposite, views, and we were able to match that together for the audience to say, okay, not necessarily like, am I team Rob or am I, team Vegas Dave, but like, now that I know both perspectives, which way do I want to be a collector in, right? So we as a director, I really wanted to focus on giving you both sides of the story throughout it. And that was a great area that everyone's going to love to see. Like, if you're vintage, you're going to love Rob Go. If you're all about new players, you're going to probably side with Vegas Dave in that section. It was interesting how they did that to each other, at the same time, that they weren't in the same room together.
Yeah, it was, and that was, like I said, I think I mentioned this before, my favorite part of the film was how you were able to find just the difference in opinions on so many, like big subs. People spend hours yelling at each other on, online forums about, because they swear that they're right and the other person thinks they're right. But it was neat to see kind of a subjective opinion of both of those things. So while we're talking about like modern, you did a segment in the movie as well on like raw versus graded, and there were separate opinions about that. So do you want to talk about how maybe even your preference, do you prefer, because I'm a graded guy, if I'm going to buy anything, especially high end, I know Steve Aoki said that he doesn't do anything outside of PSA 10s except for the Michael Jordan sticker rookie that Vegas Dave bought. I think that was his only raw card, or he burned, was his only raw card in the collection. But how do you feel about raw versus graded?
Yeah, so I think if you back then, I felt like grading in general was great. I think now that we've pushed the era that we're at and we have more base cards than ever, and we kind of entered this, what people are saying, like the graded junk era, I guess you could say. Yeah. Nowadays, I would say myself personally, I'm going for graded cards. But I'm still buying them as singles ungraded first. But I'm usually doing, I'm a Bowman guy, so I'm going after the oranges. I'm going after the golds of 50. I'm going after second, third year Julio Rodriguez is not his first, right? And getting those graded, trying to get PSA 10s out of those. And, from a flipping eBay standpoint, those are great because you can, not Julio Rodriguez, but you look at Nick Gonzalez, you can pick up a gold second year Bowman of him, gold chrome, for 15, 20 bucks, and you get a PSA 9, you're still getting 50, 60 bucks out of it. You do PSA 10, you're over 100. So I think that's the new base in terms of grading, are those after your rookie year, focus on those number cards, because I think that's going to be more linear base pricing on the PSA grades or the Beckett grades than something that is just a base, Bobby Witt Jr. rookie debut out of the Topps update, right? So I think that's the big transition that I've taken recently. And I used to say grade everything, and now I'm just focused on grade number cards, no matter what they are.
The most important thing I think people need to understand is, do you actually love the card culture? That's the most important question you ask yourself. If you don't, then it doesn't matter if it goes up or down. Just don't get involved. Get into something that you like.
And another thing that kind of came out of the COVID pandemic were a lot of new grading companies, which I thought was neat. And a lot of these secondary grading companies, kind of grasped onto the boom because PSA just couldn't get enough cards graded, and they shut down at one point. So the grading got really crazy during the 2020 COVID boom.
We actually put HGA in as a startup for the grading section in ours, and people are like,
I saw the Nick Gonzalez card was an HGA, and they were another one that was like that. Yeah, it popped up.
He's one of the Bowman guys that I wanted to get a prospect like Nick Gonzalez that was 5th overall for the Pittsburgh Pirates, just because he hasn't played, in the MLB, and his cards are, a lot of money already. So I wanted to, showcase that Bowman aspect to the world as well. But what was cool is we met an individual that pretty much had all of his chrome rainbow except for the superfractor that we were able to get signed and encased. So we put him in HGA because he's a PC guy of mine from Nick Gonzalez. So a lot of times you look at HGA right now as like a PC company, not really like grading with them to go out there and make an investment off of it. And a lot of people ask me like, why HGA and not SGC, even though SGC has been around a long time, but these other ones like what is it, CSG and Jeter has a one coming out and stuff like that.
Oh, so, I didn't know about that. That's crazy.
Yeah, and like arguably HGA at the time that we were filming was the fastest growing, I would say, startup in the card community in general. Yeah. They were well over 50 plus employees, heading to 100 employees and they were like 5 months in the business when we met up with them in Tennessee. And they actually had a really good operation behind the scenes. You wouldn't believe, I think, how corporate driven they were from a management standpoint behind the scenes, because they seem like this flashy new startup. So essentially, they're not doing as well as they were, I would say, but that's what individuals tell me in terms of like pricing their cases out. But at the time, they were just the best startup in the marketplace at the time for the grading. So we threw them in, as an alternative to the big guys out there.
And we're seeing we're seeing prices drop across the board for all these grading companies compared to where they were in 2020. I mean, they're kind of competing now to be like the lowest in the market. You got Beckett and PSA, and BGS has actually kind of really took a big hit, as far as the market goes. But to get away from grading,
$15, right? This week.
What's that?
PSA just came out, I think, with $15, right?
Yeah. So we're going to see the Topps update base card flood come in. The Bobby Witt Juniors, like you said, about there's going to be, a pop of like 10,000 Bobby Witt Jr. 2022 update rookie cards. And they're going to probably sell on eBay for a little while, and then everybody's going to be like, this is probably a bad investment. But if you're buying a card like that, it's probably for a PC anyway. So,
I got the Super Fractor for $400,000. It popped up on eBay one day. So I messaged the guy in Taiwan, and I said, what do you want for it? He goes, to be honest, I'm not going to take less than $400,000. So instead of nickeling and diming for like $350, $300, I said, you know what? Buy it now, $400,000. Then he Googled me, and he's like, oh my God, you might be a scam.
To get away from grading, how did you get Vegas Dave to do this movie? I mean, he seems like the kind of guy that's just like, piss on you. I don't really care what anybody else thinks. I'm not going to do something like this, but I know he's very into collecting. He said that at the age of 15, I think he was making like $7,000 a week running sports cards shows and getting guys like Jose Canseco to come sign autographs. Yeah. So how did you actually reel him in and convince him to be in this film?
Yeah, one of the big reasons was we're actually based in Vegas. So it was really easy from that standpoint in terms of location wise. And he doesn't really have a large team behind him. He's really a kind of like himself with a small knit team that does what they do on Instagram and things like that for his Vegas Dave side. But it took us, I think, 3 intros to him, and getting him when he was actually in Vegas was a hard part during quarantine. He was going back and forth. I think it's Cabo or Cancun that he spends a lot of time in. So interesting. It was just like, hey, you get an hour and a half. We're in, we're out. This is what we do. And it was full Vegas Dave, from the second we walked in till the second we left. He's kind of character, and he as much as he loves cars, but he also loves money more than anything. And he sees markets go up and down, right? Everything that goes up and down, he's part of, it seems like nowadays, whether it's NFTs or, Bitcoin, Cardano, those kind of cryptocurrencies. He always wants to call the up and he always wants to call it down. So he was really interested in actually showcasing that he felt like he was the one that started the boom in 17.
Yeah, he made that known.
And wanted to make sure he ended it, right? So, I think that helped too, that he knew that we had, big individuals that we were going to be on a large, theatrical run from a documentary standpoint. So that helped bring him in for sure.
How can that guy's card go up while he's in the grave dead, collecting dust? With Mike Trout, I wanted to buy a card and a player that could improve his stats every year, because if he could improve his stats every year, the card value would go up.
What is what I mean, as a director putting out a film like this, what was the part that you were most, I guess, proud of? I'm not sure if this was your first film. Is it the first film you've directed?
Yeah, it actually was my first film. I don't even I don't even have a TikTok account. I don't even filming from my side. So I tackled this one as my first content. My wife Paula loves content and saw a niche during quarantine that no one was really building big content, especially from a theatrical perspective, right? So we wanted to get this right. We hired the big guys in the industry from a production standpoint that's worked on past Batman movies, Jason Bourne movies, stuff like that, right? So we went out and found the right talent, and essentially I was telling my wife Paula about how crazy this card market was when I started selling, because I would buy boxes, and I started noticing I could go sell my Zions of those basketball boxes because it was like 1920 Prism to Mosaic time frame, and I could sell them really quickly and cheap, and make my money on eBay. And essentially she was like, this sounds like a movie. And so we were like, you know what, this is a movie. So we sat down and made it happen, and just got lucky. It was my first one.
The great thing about the hobby is that there are so many ways to buy low and sell high. And at the end of the day, investing is just buying something today and selling for more in the future. For me personally, I like singles. I like looking at players and specific cards that I can buy now and sell in the future. But people make great money with sealed wax and all different types of other investments.
So this was your first time directing a feature film. Was it hard? Did you run into any huge problems, or was it pretty easy for the first time?
We had our ups and downs, but pretty much there was little things that happened. Like our producer met us at 5 o'clock in the morning one time to see if Target had a large line. There was like 100 people. We had a good, content with flippers. We knew that we were, after that we were like, okay, this movie's going to work. And that kind of happened throughout, but also some downs. Nick Gonzalez, he was able to spend about an hour with us, hour and a half down in Tampa when he was with the minor league team. So he came down to where we were at. Literally, we said action. We hit the little thing, and he moved out, and all of our lights just turned off. The entire house that we rented, the electricity went out. So we had all lighting set up, and we were losing daylight. We had about maybe 35 minutes of daylight left. So we had to scurry outside within a 5-minute period, set up outside, which ended up being way better than what we did inside.
The beach scene was really cool. It was really cool. Yeah.
That was unexpected. So that was just
which is crazy.
Minute, running outside, trying to find some light that works for us and get it done. So, little things like that happen when you're on the road with a small crew, and you just got to roll with the punches. And from my side, it was stressful, but fun at the same time, because every little thing, since it was my first time, I'm like, oh no, is this going to ruin the film? Are we going to have Nick Gonzalez in this? Because now that this happened, are we going to have time to film anything that is going to capture, what he does as a player? And we got really lucky with that. And it just worked out way better with the beach scene for sure. But that was the ups and downs throughout the entire thing, was like that for sure.
People are looking for alternative investments, and what better alternative investment than sports cards that you can have fun with, you can experience. You're not buying a stock that's just out there. You actually have something you can hold in your hand, you can enjoy, you can treasure, you can follow the player on ESPN or wherever you're watching each week. You can keep up with statistics. So I think it's the best alternative investment out there.
And now you did win some actual awards for your documentary, correct?
Yeah, so essentially we wrapped this up we filmed April to May of 2021 pretty much. And then we wrapped it up towards the end of that November of 2021. And then we had a festival run before you always release the actual film. So we actually won 3 festival awards. I won 1 Male Director Award, so that was amazing to win a director award for the first film that I put out. And then we won Best Documentary selections for 2 films as well, just in the documentary category. So for us, that's really exciting, because if you're in the film industry or know much about the film industry, they're not kind to sports people, I would say. Usually it's sports films just don't make the cut. They want something that's very cinematography, different, unique, right? When you go and win awards. So for us to be sports-based, for a documentary and win a few awards, that was really awesome.
Yeah, well, congratulations. And like I said, I love the movie. I'm just a baseball guy, and it was really fun to watch still, as it encapsulated all of sports cards.
His cards went up 600% during the off season before the 2020 season. I never could imagine my cards being that high, like even being that valuable, honestly. Like I said, my dream was always to get to the league, and I didn't ever really think about all the other things that came with it. So just to see that it's valued that hard, I mean, seeing that my hard work is paying off somewhat is huge.
Could you see your cards being worth as much as Barry Sanders or Walter Payton in the future?
Now, as I said, I'm just a baseball guy, and my channel, Let's Talk Wax, is completely dedicated to prospecting. So before I let you go, I definitely have to ask, who are your favorite prospects that you're going to chase? As the market tends to decline and baseball season's over, the next 3 months are just opportune buying times for Bowman Chrome releases. So who are some names that you're going to chase in this opportune buying time?
The best time of the year to buy Bowman, you know, coming out of minor league and no baseball. So got to put me on spot with Bowman because I love Bowman, but I hate telling people during this time of the year because I want all
just give me one.
I want all the Bowman autos for myself, right? But so I'll give you 3 actually. I think I'm calling the next Mike Trout, Zach Bean of the Colorado Rockies. I think his power is going to come around, and he's going to be definitely a 30-30 guy. I mean, he's still in every base possible. Kind of under the radar, I think, and I know you've mentioned them a few times in the past videos, but Jordan Westburg of Baltimore Orioles. I've been collecting him when Heston, you know, was picked before him. Not a lot of people in breaks were going after Jordan Westburg, so I got heavy into him.
Yeah.
And I don't think he has any base Bowman autos, so it's just colored autos.
No, yeah, he's refractor and up. There's no huge print line or run on his base auto. So
yeah, so he's kind of like the undercover Jordan Walker, I would call him, right? From that
yeah.
And then my third one is I think the biggest dark horse right now is Kyle Manzardo. I think he's just going to come in quickly and make a dent in that lineup with the Rays. And I think anyone that can play first base and hit 300 is going to do something, I think. And his OPS and stuff has been through the roof lately. And I think you even did a video on him, right, when you did the Rays. And, you know, the Rays are always good. So in general, you know, Rays prospect is great. But I caught him early, and I literally have 35, 40 autos of him that are not base. I have a lot of his. I have a red auto PSA 10 of Zach Bean that I hit in a break. So
wow,
I'm stacking up on those guys.
Yeah.
That's great. I'm glad you asked me that.
Yeah, well, I would love to sit around and talk for another hour about prospects. So to recap, the movie releases in theaters on November 18th. Now, if the community misses the movie in theaters, which a lot of us are, we're busy, we have kids, we have jobs. Where can we see Behind the Card after it's released in theaters?
Yeah, definitely. And you know, your wife might not want to go with you if you're married, right, to see a sports card documentary in the theaters. So it's going to come out right away on on demand. So you'll be able to see it on all those on-demand channels, on platforms, cable, and you know, the larger platforms that you can rent movies out as well. So follow us at Who's Behind the Card. It's our Instagram. It's where you see, you know, what we're doing behind the scenes with all of our cast members as well. And you can kind of see where we go from there. So we'll obviously be on a larger platform after we kind of run our course in theaters and on demand. But looking forward to everyone seeing it out there. And hopefully you guys enjoy it as much as I did, and as much as hopefully you did, Kyle.
Yeah. And, you know, as a kind of a veteran, you know, prospect guy, I loved it from a veteran standpoint. And as a newcomer into the hobby, there's so much information in just that movie, you know, that you could actually learn with the entertainment factor. So it's just a really, really cool film. And like I said, it kind of brings in all these different opinions on big topics in the sports cards industry. So I want to thank Chris Fitzjarrald, the director of Behind the Card, for talking to me tonight. It was fun talking to you. We've never met before, but I learned a lot about, you know, how passionate you are about sports cards after watching the movie. So I want to thank you, and I hope everything goes well with the release.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Kyle. Everyone, you know, watches your channel, loves it. So do I, and keep doing what you're doing. And can't wait to see your next video out.